So we'll call the meeting to order. We have everybody here tonight. I see there were no additions to the agenda.
Correct.
We need a motion to approve the agenda.
So
Motion from Cheryl, a second from Rick. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no. Carried. Do we have anybody here for public comment? I suspect nobody's here for public comment. I suppose we should explain to the screen that everybody at home that we are adhering to the 6 feet apart, and we are in the seminar room today instead of our normal boardroom because that is a lot closer quarters. So then next in line we have the consent agenda, and I'll bring up one item on this consent agenda. March 10th. Maggie, you were here, correct? On March 10th to the meeting?
Yes, I was
Because
just
you
late.
weren't on the
I was late,
minutes.
so that's why.
Meg, can you just check Maggie on the minutes there?
we can add Maggie.
Yep.
Yeah. So then, any questions on the minutes? None. Cheryl, let's go to you for bills and things.
I was able to go and audit the bills. Everything was pretty much normal. The one thing to note that I noticed was we did get another van. And it sounds like a local vendor was able to get us a used van with very few miles on it to save us some money. So we're being very careful with our monies.
Good,
Good job.
good. Okay, anything else in the financial items that anybody's got any questions on? Okay, then personnel items. Can I just?
Sure, there's a few overloads here for second semester that I should have had to the board back in February, but I didn't, so they're here today. Spring coaches advisors are on the list as well. I know there's some question as far as with school being closed and all of that, what is the plan? Most of these activities have already started, and so those coaches have been working on that. My understanding, most school districts are continuing with their spring activity contracts at this point, so I would recommend that we do honor those as well. And then we have a retirement notice from Mr. Jeff Youngs. Questions on any of the personnel items?
There's no questions, we'd entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda. Motion from Thomas,
A second.
second from Cheryl. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed say no. Carried. Okay, we're on communication items, and Matt, we're back to you.
First of all, I just need to start off by saying that this, the content of what I'm going to say is only as up to date as when it comes out of my mouth. And it may very well be different by the time the meeting's over. So just know that everything is fluid, everything is changing very rapidly. Obviously, since the last time we met, the governor closed schools for 8 days in order to plan for distance learning. That has been happening. As we speak, it is continuing to happen at Paynesville schools, and we are in the process of moving forward with that. The board just needs to understand that this is a different world. It is not what any of our school experiences have been. It's probably not going to be any school experience for our parents either. And so it is going to be different. As we make the transition, the one thing I think it's important for board members to understand, our intent as a school district is to work with parents, work with students. You will notice us being very flexible. You will notice us taking a position that our intent is to hold families harmless, to hold students harmless. And those messages, as much as you can reinforce, it is greatly appreciated. Couple examples I just want to let you in on. So meal service is something right now that we've been taking on and continuing even during the closure. I did get an email, this was several days ago, and it was from a child care provider. And the child care provider was asking, well, is there a reason that child care places can't participate in this meal service that's going on? My understanding, in the rules that I'm working with, the only thing that we have to be concerned about is meals are free to anyone in our community age 18 or younger. So my response to them was absolutely. We don't have the capacity right now to deliver to your front door, but we have sites all over our school district, our elementary school site in town. If you want to have children at your daycare to be able to come over and get meals, absolutely. So we are going to continue that mentality of we are here to work with people. We are not here to put rigid rules in place just so that we have a good list of rigid rules that we can feel like we're honoring and abiding by. We need to communicate and we need to be flexible. This is new for everybody. There's anxiety out there, and it's not only anxiety because school's not in session, it's anxiety because what they see on the news, what they hear, that it's a time now where it's just, it's time for people to work together. And that is the position that the school district is taking. And we will talk more about that when we get into the actual COVID-19 stuff later in the agenda. But I just want board members to know that that is the stance of this district, and it's going to continue to be the stance, and as much as you can reinforce that, it would be appreciated. People that are calling you with questions or concerns, please have them call David, Mary, or myself. I have yet to hear a single concern about this shutdown, that the people that have emailed me or called me, my response hasn't been, yes, we can do that. So please just keep that in the back of your mind. Future board meetings. Most school districts that I'm aware of in our area are transitioning to remote meetings. The governor, in declaring the state of emergency in Minnesota, has paved the way for this to happen, so we certainly can have remote meetings. There are a few criteria. We do have to obviously post with our local paper, so we'd have to let the Paynesville press know. We would identify what statute we'd be operating under. I don't have it memorized off the top of my head, but we would provide that appropriate notice. The biggest hurdle that I see is I need to get board members trained on Google Meet. So that's one thing that I think we need to start working on. If it's fine with board members, I will just make a point of emailing you individually to set up a time to come and meet with me. Again, I will be flexible on those. I can meet in the mornings, evenings. Heck, I can meet on the weekend if you need to. So I'll take those steps and get those things moving. When we are having remote meetings, we do need myself and one board member to be in our official meeting location. So tonight we are in this space so that we can observe social distancing. Obviously, if we go to a situation where we have a remote meeting, we can go back to the boardroom, because realistically it would be myself and Linda and a board member, and then we would also have a chair in the room for our newspaper. So that room is large enough where 4 people can be in that room and still meet those social distancing requirements. So unless there are board members that object, I would like to go down that road of beginning that remote meeting emergency protocol, and we can get that started. And then depending on what ends up happening in the future with any more executive orders and stuff, that may also determine how or when we are going to meet as well.
Are those Google meetings, are they open to the public? Can they join too, or?
No, what we would be doing is, so the meeting is never closed. So even when we're doing a remote meeting, we can't close it to the public. So the public would still have to come to our designated meeting space. So the boardroom here is where the public would come. So it's not that the meeting itself is ever closed to the public. One thing that is available in Google Meet is you can record right in Google Meet. So the idea that we would then need to record like we have done with the camera that's on us right now and then post it to our YouTube channel, we would just take the Google Meet footage and that's what we would be posting to our YouTube channel. But there isn't, even if you are having a remote meeting, there isn't, there's no clause that allows that remote meeting to be closed. It's still an open meeting, the open meeting still applies. You can close a section of it if you meet certain statutes that allow boards to close meetings, but they're still open public meetings.
I just meant if the public for some reason wanted to join the meeting, but still observe the social distancing, can they join?
No, I would not have the public join on our Google Meet. That I would not be in favor of that. I would just, our meeting would still be open to the public. It would just be, they would be coming to the boardroom to be a part of that meeting. We would still have public input on the agenda. If there was a community member that wanted to come and present something at public input, then we would get them in front of the camera so that all board members could have the audio and could have the video, and it would be part of that meeting.
So, couple things, I'm okay to come to all the meetings if you guys don't want to, somebody else wants to jump at it, fine, but I can be here. Is the Google Meet similar to a Zoom or a Skype? So everybody's on there, we're verbally talking, all those are the coolest things.
Yeah, so you would have, so like even on our screens, we would have essentially 8 people on the
Yep.
meeting. It would be myself and the 7 board members. Google Meet operates in whoever audio Google Meet is picking up, they view them as the speaker, so they're the picture that takes up the largest portion of the screen. You can set it up so that all board members have the same portion and it doesn't recognize that. Personally, I think it's easier to follow a meeting if the speaker is the one whose image you see in the large screen, and then you just see tiles of all the other people that are in the meeting. There's also a chat feature in Google Meet, so if you have a question, it's really nice if you type your question in chat. That way the next person, the person who's speaking and the other people in the meeting can see, oh, Maggie's got a question coming up. As soon as this person's done talking, I'm gonna let Maggie have the floor so she can ask her question. And those are things we can go over when we talk and do the kind of one-on-one, Google Meet 101.
So when everybody comes in, we should bring these? So
Yes.
we can actually see how it works.
Correct.
Yeah, that would be perfect.
Yep.
Okay, well, I think we need to move that way, everybody else agree, because nobody knows where we're headed to at the moment.
Okay.
Okay.
That's what I have for communication.
So committee reports, I'm a little bit lost there, I kind of think nothing maybe?
I don't know, our policy committee meeting got
Everything was kind of
postponed.
postponed.
So I don't know that we have a lot. C meeting got canceled.
The essential ed did already report, I can't remember if I.
Yes, you did report on that. I don't believe they had, so on my calendar, I didn't really have any.
Okay, I assume not, I didn't really, so then, old business, we don't have anything at the moment. New business, let's move to the calendars. Matt, I'll just turn it right back to you.
So the calendar's a growing document. One thing when you get in there, the first calendar that pops up is the 2019-2020 calendar. So you do have to go down to the bottom of your screen and hit the tab that says 2021. And so if you go to that, that's where we're at. So a couple things with the calendar. Obviously with the facility project, this really locks us into a post-Labor Day start. The idea, there are school districts, due to the fact that Labor Day is September 7th, there are districts that are going to try and start beforehand. I believe there's some stipulations they still have to follow. I don't think you can have school Friday before the Labor Day weekend, and there's some other things, but it really isn't an option for us because of the facility project. Otherwise, you move forward with this, it's really very similar to this year's calendar. Fall parent-teacher conferences are on October 14th. Spring parent-teacher conferences are on March 4th. Otherwise, we're looking at 171 student days, 184 faculty days. As I said, the facility project really doesn't start a pre-Labor Day start, so when you start putting that in and say our first day with students is going to be the Tuesday after Labor Day, you put in 171 days and you get to June 4th is essentially what ends up happening. So, I mean, I don't know really if the board has questions or concerns about it. The one thing that potentially would be a good thing to do would be to move commencement to Sunday, May 30th. That is a Memorial weekend. I don't know what the district's perspective is on that. I know there will be school districts that do have commencement on that weekend. But right now, in this calendar, commencement is Sunday, June 6th. Questions or thoughts from the board?
So before you arrived, we were on Memorial Weekend a lot.
Yep,
And we had a lot of discussion back then
yep,
about kind of moving away from a family weekend.
okay,
And,
then I would leave it on June 6th.
yeah, it looked like it was pretty good, but unless the board decides they want to do something different. But I think some of the discussion was, we hear all the time about the family units, and then there's only so many 3-day weekends, and we like one of them.
Sure. So, and I'm not recommending that we do this at this time, but the other thing that there are school districts that do quite a bit is they would do a Friday evening commencement. That potentially would be, I mean, those are really the options that districts are doing. It's a lot of times it's Sunday. Sunday seems to be the most, Sunday afternoons are typically where districts are falling. If they're not on a Sunday afternoon, then there are districts that are going on a Friday evening commencement. So, food for thought, it's not something we need to do right now. You guys can think about it. You can approve this calendar as is, and if 2 months from now, you want to have a conversation about moving that commencement date, or the high school principal here wants to talk about moving that commencement date, that is something that the board can certainly move around. We just need to have a preliminary calendar approved, and it'd be my recommendation that this would be what it is.
Just for information, there was a time when it was always on an evening. Oh, yours was, I can't remember,
I never remember.
Beth was, but we had a lot of discussion for a long time about moving it from an evening to a Sunday. There were some good reasons to move it to
Sure.
a Sunday.
Yep.
One of which was to get it away from an evening when the kids would all then go out and celebrate it.
Yep.
So,
No?
and open houses were another reason, but yeah, it used to be in the evening, so.
And I think there's pros and cons with wherever you put it, whether it be an evening or an afternoon, whether it be a Sunday or not a Sunday, whether it be a holiday weekend or not a holiday weekend. It's really, you're gonna get as many perspectives as you have people in the conversation, and so.
So if anybody comes up and says, well, we always had a Sunday, well, no, you haven't always had a Sunday.
Right. So,
Are the seniors in session through the 4th then?
no, they will not be.
They won't be.
No, realistically, and I'm not gonna speak for David here, but, realistically, I don't necessarily know that the seniors would be in session much past, May 28th.
Mhm. So that would be the only thing, I don't know if that matters, that they're done for a week, I don't think that matters either. I was just trying to think if there's another variable, but I don't think.
When we were talking about it a few years, when we made the change, there was a conversation about having the graduates graduate a week early. Most times they're done with all their stuff, and have it the week before Memorial Weekend. And at that time, we ended up with the week after. But it was very interesting when we did it, because we went out to the public and we had a bunch of surveying done and find out where people were at, but there were lots of suggestions that weren't Memorial Weekend, but one of them was a week early. And I think,
This year, our seniors would be done on Friday, the 22nd, and then graduation is the 31st, so it's typically a week that they're done.
I remember what the issue is, now that you said that. At the time we were looking at that, there was a question whether the high school could get all their stuff done to make sure the kids were of graduating status between Friday, does that sound right, Linda? Between Friday and that Sunday. If that becomes a non-issue,
It gives you some leeway.
yeah. So we can accept this for now.
Okay.
And I think probably with the calendar, it could be considered somewhat fluid. We
Yeah,
have a lot of things going
Yeah.
on.
and then can we just flip to the 21-22 tab as well? So, I prefer to always do 2 calendars at once. The 2021 is really what our discussion was about, that's what the meeting confirm meeting was about. So what I've done for 21-22 is then just take the 2021 calendar and roll it forward a year. Just to give people an idea, if we go with a similar calendar the following year, these are the dates that we would be looking at for parent-teacher conferences, for Easter, Good Friday, Easter Monday off, and things like that. There are a variety of organizations that use like to be planning a year out and stuff, and so they at least have a decent idea. You're not approving a 21-22 calendar, you're not even calling it a draft, but just know this is out there kind of in a pseudo draft form. It's where we will start the conversation a year from now when we start talking about the 21-22 calendar.
And your 21 and 22 is still facility related, why would
Correct.
we consider
Yeah.
a year after would be?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. Labor Day is still the only option for 21-22. To do an early start on 21-22 with what our building
Okay.
calendar is, it's not
It's not
gonna happen. So right now, we are wanting them to turn the facility over to us in August of 21. So the new addition part, turning all that over in August 21. So 22-23, we'll be back to having some flexibility. Okay?
Okay, so we are looking for a motion to approve the 2021 school calendar as presented.
I'll make a motion.
We
to
have a
approve
motion
this.
from Maggie,
Second.
we have a second from Thomas. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed say no, carried. Then we are on the 2021 budget. Back to you, Matt.
Okay, so this is just information for the board. It's actually good information because we get to talk about the possibilities of doing some things differently and potentially adding some services for students. Right now, if we look at 2021, our general fund only, so that's just important that the board remember, this is just our general fund line item. This isn't any specialized dedicated fund. We are on track right now, moving everything over. We have all of our contracts settled. We have a lot of things that really dictate what our expenditures are gonna be. They're already set because this is gonna be the second year of the biennium. We know what our state funding allocation is gonna be, barring something miraculous that would happen. And like I said, contracts are settled. So if we run that in our general fund, we're looking at revenue of just over 8.6 million, again, just general fund, and expenditures about 8.46 million for about $142,000 fund balance. The administrative team has been talking about some other services that potentially we could look at providing for students. Obviously, you approved earlier a retirement letter for a social studies position, so that position needs to be posted and filled. The rest of these all, we would really like to see some movement and some additional programming in that whole social emotional learning venue. So what we right now have on staff is a full-time social worker. That's a individual who works exclusively with Paynesville area schools. They're an employee of the West Central Ed District, but they are in Paynesville area schools 5 days a week. To give you an example, before we went to shutdown mode, that social worker was working with over 100 students, had over 100 students on their caseload. Obviously, that is more than what is reasonable to expect somebody to be providing direct services for. So we talked a lot about potentially doing a second social worker, and I think we actually have come up with kind of more of a combination of a mental health service, a skills worker, and a social worker. We don't really know exactly what we would call this position per se, but originally we were talking about let's add a second social worker, and now we've kind of retooled and are talking about this social emotional learning skills worker, this hybrid position. So that potentially would cost us about $15,000, and the reason that it's costing us $15,000 is we would use our safe school funds for the 2021 school year, which are roughly $38,986. So to figure out the total cost of that position, you'd have to add those two together. That's what we're looking at. Moving forward, then, it is also my intent to have Paynesville area schools apply for alternative delivery of specialized instruction service, this ADSIS program. ADSIS is a state program that really is geared towards providing early intervention services for all students. with the hope to be able to prevent special education referrals, and it's really kind of that preventative practices in order to hopefully prevent special education referrals and students being identified as needing special education services. That program is a one-to-one match. So when we go through this ADSIS process, which we're gonna start this summer, then we would be looking at developing an ADSIS program and identifying positions, and we would have the state fund 50% of those positions, and the district would pick up the other 50%. That SEL skills worker is a position that would be included into that ADSIS application, along with a variety of other things. We're looking at switching our provider for mental health services. This right now is funded out of Stearns County Family Services Collaborative. That would be continue to be the practice, it just would be a different provider. New this year is we have a 0.5, a half-time person who's working in work experience. This person works with students on IEPs and students that not are on IEPs, and is really kind of that go-between between employers and students and that whole work experience process. So students may attend the high school for 3 blocks and then they may go to work and earn high school credit for their work experience. This person is the one who oversees that. They do all the job site visits, they work with the kids to have the appropriate school-to-work plans and the such. They work with employers. Our demand is growing, and so the idea that this can only be a half-time person, we need to ramp that up. And so we really do need a dedicated full-time equivalent for that program. So that triggers a couple of things that then we need to kind of reevaluate our special education staffing, and that's where those other FTEs are coming from, because we're taking that person who right now is half-time work experience, half-time special ed, and we're taking and putting them full-time work experience. And then there's a little domino effect that ends up moving forward. The one thing that I'm nervous about with this is special ed positions are hard to fill. They're not easy to find licensed candidates. And so the question becomes, if we have a 0.5, a 50% FTE open in special ed, is there a way that potentially we could address some other needs by having that person actually on a full-time contract? One of the things that we were kind of talking about is potentially doing some stuff with our response to intervention, MTSS, Marie Grothy, Maria Rasmussen came and talked to the board about it, potentially having to pair a person to work within that structure and early childhood special ed. So that would be dedicated for something that would be targeting at our elementary.
So how does that program like interact with the ADSIS program? Like they're both early, I mean, it's all early identification.
Yeah.
Is there overlap? Is it?
So there can be. So some ADSIS programs, and I forget which ones, I was just reviewing some in the state that have been approved. And some ADSIS programs are very heavily slanted towards their response to intervention, their MTSS framework. And so yes, some districts did move in that direction, and that's how they're developing that framework, is that 50-50 cost share. We have an interesting thing because we are an achievement and integration district, and so we are actually building our framework through our achievement and integration grant dollars from the state. So I don't necessarily know that we need to go down that direction, but I think that's what opens up this ADSIS conversation to more social emotional learning.
Okay.
And how do we build that framework from that social emotional learning mental health side of the house? How do you build that? And that's where I would target that ADSIS program.
Okay. I'm just thinking with resources and
Yeah.
we're trying to figure it all out. What is overlap with it? What, like, if there's an
And
event
that's
diagram,
and that's
how it-
ultimately what you're doing. It's ultimately a 1,000-piece jigsaw puzzle.
Right.
And all 1,000 pieces need to come together. How they come together in Paynesville might be different than how they come together in Rochester. So, I mean, but yeah, you're absolutely on the right track. So that's kind of the thought right now. This was, well, let's fast forward. I'm sorry, I should finish here. So you can see the scenario here. If we just do the 0.5 ECSC, and you can see where that leaves our general fund balance. That would be we'd be projecting a 2021 balance of $72,000. If we actually did the ECSE and partnered it with that MTSS framework or RTI, then you would see that would go to about a almost $47,000. So the bottom line here, either way, we are going to get a budget in front of you on June 30th. That's going to be a positive fund balance. And what we're targeting, as we talked about at the work session, actually no, I think we talked about it at the February business meeting, what's comfortable and where this district should be with that ending fund balance, in my opinion, is around that $1.8 million is where we should be. So as you can see, whatever plan we're talking about here, the intent is to honor that number, and we would not be recommending that we go below that. So questions or thoughts? Again, this is just information, you're not acting on anything, I just wanted to get this in front of you so you can see kind of at least what my thoughts are, what our admin team has been talking about, and where things are kind of moving.
Another question. I'm glad the district is addressing mental health needs. When you look at that student survey, it's clear. So my question is, so if our current social worker is serving 100 students, do we feel, if we have somebody part-time, will that, like, what is the manageable workload? Like,
right level?
Like, do we actually need 2 and?
Yeah, so the answer to that is we do need 2 and.
Okay.
But that also brings up an interesting point with this Doctors Park Medical Services. So they are a provider that's out of St. Cloud. They're an interesting provider because they do not accept insurance. And originally when I heard that, I immediately thought, oh, that doesn't sound very, very good for me. A red flag went up, but I met with them anyway, we had really good conversation. And the more I kind of processed it, the insurance can also be a lot of red tape and a barrier. So for instance, like right now, we're working with True Balance. True Balance is aware that we're looking for another provider. They don't even know that they'd be able to provide us services next year. So they're aware of that, and they understand where we're at. True Balance does bill insurance. And so a lot of what we can use, that mental health expertise, is dictated by what is reimbursable activities for insurance. Whereas Doctors Park, all we're doing is entering a contract with them for how many hours. What I would like to see is that we enter a contract that they're here 1 day a week, and I want 2 hours a day that they're here, that we can have them working with anybody we want. They could work directly with training teachers, they could be working directly in grade level with students, they could be doing whatever we want. The other 6 hours would be available for them to see clients in Paynesville area schools or in our community. We wouldn't necessarily have to pay them for the 6 hours that that we aren't contracted with. We're just providing them a satellite place for them to have their practice. The 2 hours is what we would be contracting for, but with those 2 hours, we don't have any insurance red tape. If we want them to go work with 3rd graders about this social emotional skill, they can go work with 3rd graders. Doesn't matter if they're qualified for mental health services or not, but they have the expertise, they can go and do that. If we want them to come and work with our licensed teachers on an in-service day, they can 100% do that. So the more I've kind of thought about it, I think maybe the insurance piece and having that freedom might actually be a silver lining compared to at least where I was starting the conversation thinking, well, if we don't have insurance reimbursement, how are we going to do this? So, again, this is just information at this point. There's nothing right now that I'm prepared to have anyone act on. It's just so the board can see kind of what the thought process is. To be honest with you, the events of the last couple of weeks have really turned budgeting on its head. And so we're a little behind where we were before, and we're gonna have to make up that ground. But this is just kind of a snapshot of where we're at right now. Okay?
Very good. Any more questions on that topic? Anybody? Then we're on graduation requirements information. Back to you, Mr.
Okay, so this is just a continuation of the conversation that we started. We kind of ran out of time at the work session. We had to adjourn by 6 o'clock. So I just wanted to revisit it. Again, it's not anything that we need to act on tonight. Right now in our current system, we are requiring 24 credits for graduation is what we are currently requiring. The plan that the high school principal and myself would like to see, we would like to see, 26. No, we're at 24, thank you. We're at 24. We would like to see this increase to 26. The reason for the increase, in the old system, before the block schedule, students had 7 class periods. A full load was defined as 6 classes plus a study hall. So they're essentially taking 6 classes. The current block system now, they're taking 8 classes each semester, 0 study halls. So what we need to do here is we need to ramp up, and I would encourage that we do it in steps, that we need to ramp up the overall credits required for graduation. Realistically, the way that things are set up, if we don't ramp those up, it just becomes very confusing for students once they get to be a senior, because we run into all the questions about, well, I've got all my credits satisfied, except I need 4 years of English per the Minnesota Department of Education and things. So that's where this is coming from. Realistically, as far as tweaking any of the requirements, really the requirements are the same. It's just because students are now taking more classes, it only makes sense that we should also have those overarching number of credits required for graduation should climb as well. Ultimately, what we're doing is we're requiring kids to take more elective classes, is what we're trying to do. So, we can continue the conversation that we were having from the work session.
Okay, question then.
Yes,
Looking at the proposed,
yes.
are these all state required
So-
classes?
Let's go through those, and David, you correct me when I misspeak, okay? English is 100%, that's what the state requires, is 4 years of English. Social studies, this is basically 3.5, so if you look at the bottom where it says social studies elective, that 1 semester class, that is an additional local requirement. The 3.5, those are all scripted by the state. Science, straight, those are the state requirements. Mathematics, those are the state requirements. Physical education, those are the state requirements. Art, those are the state requirements. Electives, that's where we would increase those, and that's where it's different than the state.
So the state requires the 16 credits.
The state requires 21.5
I
credits.
mean, total, yes, okay.
Yeah.
They require these 16.
Well, actually, the Phi-Ed and Health, there is no state requirement other than it has to be offered at least once
Okay.
to a high school student. So, and that's up to district discretion. So we require the health and Phi-Ed in 9th grade. Otherwise, really the only difference is the number of elective credits that we are requiring compared to.
So the state requires 21 and a half
Correct.
total.
Total.
Okay.
The thing to remember too with, so a student starting 9th grade, by the time they graduate, can have 32 credits. But we also have classes like our CNA program where the student is taking that class, but then they're not able to take another class that first hour. So that gives you the leeway between the 26 and the 32. So students can graduate with 28 credits because they've taken some 0-hour classes or they've taken some classes with that are online and things like that. So that's where you get a little bit of the difference between the 26 and the 32. Is that where we want to be? We're not quite sure. I think we want to look at some type of a capstone requirement that students, high school seniors need to do something before they can graduate, some type of a community service. And whether it's as a senior or any grade is yet to be determined, but we want to require some type of a community service that would also fall into that.
So does that leave a lot of, I mean, the 26, moving that up, as we're gonna have more students doing things like CNA, working in business, doing internships, whatever it may be, you feel that gives enough space that if they're gonna miss that next class because they're commuting from somewhere?
Yeah, and it's only, juniors and seniors that are doing those, except for the CNA program, some sophomores can get in there, but, so, and it's really, like one a semester or one a year, so there's, that leeway would still be in there.
There's good cushion for them,
Mhm.
for all of them.
I don't mean to make it simple, but my impression is that this is telling me that there's not gonna be any detriment to the students with the conversion, that when the block system is in motion, the credits that you're asking about are just gonna kinda happen anyway. It's not like we're,
Actually, Cassandra's already converted everything over.
so that we have no detriment to any kids.
No, any situations that we have, we're holding students harmless when it comes to credits and requirements, yeah.
So somebody gets into this area and they're gonna do their normal block schedule, they're gonna get their learning that they're supposed to get, they're gonna end up with the credits, so.
Yes.
Okay.
I guess another question, has nothing, this is fine, I'm just curious about state requirements.
Yep.
State requires 3 credits in science. Are we offering principles of biomedical science as something we're offering, or is that a state requirement? Or are they just saying you have to have?
No,
science?
that's what we are offering, so, and the state is actually just now retooling. The new science standards are coming out. Mary and David know far more about them than I do, so.
That's gonna be part of our, as we start working on our online, or our digital curriculum, is adjusting to those standards, and those standards will dictate the classes that we're teaching. I am in my first year at understanding this, so I'm not gonna pretend that I know everything about why we're offering those particular courses, but
So I can talk a little bit about these because I do know the current system. So grade 9 is a conceptual physical science, grade 10 is a life science, and then the third requirement is a year of chemistry and or physics. And so that's where those consumer chemistry, or POE, is principles of engineering. So principles of engineering we sub in as a physics course, but that's how those 3 that are on here are. Now, as the state rolls out these standards, they are moving where some of these are gonna be. So I think the life science isn't gonna reside necessarily in grade 10, because typically physical science 9 is 9th grade, biomedical science is 10th grade, and then the chemistry physics is either 11th and or 12th. But so now with the new standards that are gonna be rolling out, they are moving those around rather significantly, actually. But they're still keeping the same 3 full year credits of science are still what the state is requiring for graduation.
Not the school board association, either, we're talking about other areas like arts, adding more.
Yeah,
Now, that's not something that's been done, they're just recommending that at this point.
yeah, and that is starting to get some conversation on the statewide basis, because there are a lot of schools outside of the metro area that are nervous about what is this gonna mean for arts, and how is it that it's gonna be something that people can deliver. And so I think there's more to come on that conversation about where it ends up and what the final recommendation turns out to be.
Any other questions on this one? Okay.
So the plan right now is that tonight was gonna just be a continuation of our conversation from the work session, so then expect this to come to the business meeting in April, and it would be a action item for the board then to approve at the April meeting.
Okay,
Okay?
well, then we are on item D then.
Okay, so let's,
119, go for it.
yeah, let's talk about this. All right, so just to update the board, so the school district's been working on distance learning plans, and that started the Wednesday, the 18th of March, and it continues, it's ongoing today as we speak. Mary and David have been very busy with teachers, departments, and really working through this. I will just say that as someone who is part of the conversation and being involved in the conversation and then able to take a little bit of a step back and see how things are going, I have been very impressed with the direction and where this is moving. I think whether it be custodial crew, paraprofessionals, food service employees, teachers, all of them should be commended for what they are working on. Now, with that being said, I did send an email out today at about 1:30, and I just wanted to remind employees that we just have to be careful. We don't necessarily know that we're gonna be in a distance learning model come March 30th or not, so let's be really mindful of how we deliver messages to families and how we talk about this. At 2 o'clock, the governor had a press conference, and he had one statement about schools. And his statement about schools was answering a question. His response was that obviously the closure of bars, restaurants, and schools will have to be addressed prior to March 27th. So, that tells me that students are not going to be back in school on March 30th, or for us, March 30th was a teacher in-service day here, so March 31st. What that tells me is we are going to go and implement our distance learning plan. And I assume that the governor will formally announce that either tomorrow or Thursday or Friday. I had heard enough from that one sentence. There will be a communication that will be going out to all families tomorrow that will communicate to them that effective on Monday, March 30th, we are going to be rolling out our distance learning plan. Couple things I just want to make sure that the board understands with that. The intent is to make our distance learning plan simple. The rollout is going to be simple. My experience with any sort of massive change like this is it is critically important for people to feel success immediately. So that is the goal, that's number one when we start to roll this out. It's not to develop all these fancy videos and things that we're gonna have kids engaged with and expect them to be working for hours and hours at home on their schoolwork. It's a simple tactic of actually reaching out, communicating with everyone, making sure everyone's connected, making sure everyone has internet, making sure everyone can interact like we're asking them to. And if we can't, then we need to rally our resources to get people, the right people, in place to communicate with families, to troubleshoot, to work with them, so that we get all students in a place where they can be connected and feel like they have easy access to the resources that they need. Okay? So that's going to be how we're going to roll this out. Realistically, I think as we start this process on Monday, really, it's probably gonna take us 3 to 4 days to get everybody up to speed with where we want them as far as accessing, whether it's Google Meet or Google Chat or Flipgrid or Seesaw or any of these other applications. It's gonna take us 3 or 4 days to work with families and students to make sure they feel comfortable using the technology. Then you're gonna start to see the schoolwork. It doesn't make any sense to me to just throw out a whole bunch of schoolwork and then all of a sudden have the anxiety level go through the roof, have everybody frustrated, they all throw their hands up and says, well, this isn't gonna work. So we just need to be very metered about how we do it. It needs to be simple. People need to feel success. But the same thing that we started this meeting off, if you get phone calls that you feel like people aren't feeling success, please have them call David, have them call Mary, have them call myself. We will figure out a way to make sure we can get everybody to that point. Meal distribution, so just to give the board a heads up on this too, part of the 8-day shutdown required us to, one, do distance learning planning, and then we also needed to continue to provide meals. So we did set up 7 remote sites. The elementary school is the 8th site. And today, we served between, this is breakfast and lunch, so we served over 400 meals today. It was like 416 meals or something is what went out today. Again, the only requirements for these meals is that you're 18 and under, they are free for everybody. So if there's people talking uptown that are wondering if they are eligible, if they're 18 or younger, the answer is yes. And again, we are being very flexible with that. People are, for instance, I know there's one person up that meets the bus up in Lake Henry, and I think they pick up 8 meals, and they take them back, and there's about 3 stops that they make on their township road as they go back home, and they drop off meals to those people as well. So just know we have more capacity. We have people that are willing to help out, and we could certainly serve more than 400 meals, so if there's people that are interested, get the word out to them. The other requirement of our 8-day distance learning planning is we need to offer emergency childcare services for emergency personnel and others. Today, we had 24 children in that emergency childcare service. That service is provided from 7:45 to 3:45, and it is for children that are ages 4 to 12 is the age requirement. It is basically the replacement of the school day is what the requirement is. Buildings and grounds personnel are super cleaning both buildings. We have a map that they are following, so they're going around and continuing to do that with approved COVID-19 killing products. Luckily, since we're in here tonight, they did already super clean this room. They're going to get to clean it again because now we were here. So they'll be back in here to be able to go through everything as well. Moving forward then, we are finalizing our distance learning plan. Our admin group is meeting tomorrow morning to touch base on that. Thursday, we have a distance learning plan meeting set up as well. By Monday morning, we do have to have our distance learning plan posted on our website. And so that will go up hopefully by Friday before everyone leaves, but worst case scenario will be up by Monday morning. And then the plan will be to kick off that distance learning plan on Monday, March 30th. But just know that it will be a very metered implementation at Paynesville. And we feel it's important that people feel like this can be successful. So, questions as far as any of that stuff? Yes?
What does that mean that we have to have a distance learning plan? What do you have to have posted for that?
Well, I received the template today that had, I think, 16 or 19 questions from MDE that you have to provide answers in your plan. I haven't decided if we're going to follow the template or not. So.
Sure.
Will the meals continue?
Yes, so if we are in distance learning mode, those meals will absolutely continue. Yes.
I did have communication from a community member asking, why the heck are the buses going out? And I was able to answer her about the meal program.
Yep.
And she said, that is so cool. So it's appreciated even by community members without children.
Yeah, and I think that's the other piece that's important with the whole distance learning plan. Obviously, technology needs to play a role. It's foolish for anybody to think you're going to do distance learning without technology. Obviously, technology also needs to be appropriate for whatever age level we're talking about. But the nice thing with having those buses rolling out, we also have a lot of built-in capacity to be able to do some non-tech related instructional components because we have these 7 satellite sites and we can use them also to distribute materials, to collect materials, and to do a variety of other things. So those buses, absolutely, they will continue to run when we're in distance learning mode. And the one thing the governor was very clear in the press conference today, he is non-committal on what the duration of something like this will last. He, in fact, was very straight that he doesn't believe that we can just set distance learning or schools are going to operate this way for 4 weeks or 5 weeks or 6 weeks. He doesn't believe you can put a time frame to it. So I would suspect that will probably be something in his announcement later this week that he'll announce distance learning, but I do not know that he will have that in that announcement. At least it didn't sound like today he would.
Are there
So
going
look, the question I have is a little more, and I don't know how we address it specifically, but I know that we have everybody telling us they have internet accessibility. Some of the people I'm talking to have internet accessibility through hotspot on their telephones. And so, like I have a jetpack, no different than a hotspot except doesn't kill your battery. But anyway, I can hook up sometimes to certain methods, and seriously, they just kill the data usage. Other times, it's not so much. The ones that I've seen, you're in touch with somebody and you're maybe having a more of an interaction, those sometimes just eat people's data up. The other thing I noticed about the jetpack, and I have what's called an unlimited package at 15 gigabytes, that baby slows down. Now does it work after that? So my question will be multiple, not maybe for an answer. But do we have Garrick and Jonah working on this a little bit? Because at the end of the day, whatever you set up, if somebody's saying they have internet access and it's hotspot, it is going to kill them if we hit them with a monster data usage. And I know it separates a little bit from the topic, but I think it's important. I think a fair amount of people, their access to the internet is their telephone, and the times I've used it, man, it just is a data killer.
So a couple things with that. So first of all, the one good thing is Google Classroom is the LMS system that we are using as a district. Google Classroom and all Google products, whether it's docs, presentations, sheets, you name it, they are very data friendly. You do not need a lot of data bandwidth to be able to work in Google Docs. Now, when you talk about Google Meet and the video component, that is something that's going to require more bandwidth. So that has to be something that we're mindful, and I think that's the thing that people, as we roll this out, one of the things that people are gonna have to get used to is, it is not our intention to have students in front of a screen on a Google Meet video conference call with teacher to teacher to teacher, where they need to be on a video in a virtual classroom with video for 6.5 hours a day. That is not in any way what this is gonna look like. It is going to rely heavily on Google Classroom. It's gonna rely heavily on chat features to be able to have a classroom chat, things that are much more bandwidth friendly. Now, are there going to be some things where instructors will record some videos of some lessons, instructions and things that kids might have to watch? Absolutely. That'll be a component of it, but it is those people that are concerned that, you know, one, my kid's gonna be in front of their Chromebook all day, or two, I don't have enough data to have them video conferencing every school day now. That is not at all what this plan is going to look like. So I think that's the other piece, but again, it's that whole learning curve. It's starting simple and building this up so that people feel comfortable with it and that it all comes together and it makes sense.
So the data usage for most people is probably gonna be similar. So when we get this started, obviously, again, it's a moving target. Is somebody gonna track that a little bit? So we don't find after the second day, they wiped out 4 gigabytes out of their 15 gigabytes on the second day, and then we are totally scrambling. Is Garrick or somebody?
Well, we don't have a way to track what a person is consuming. So for instance, like.
Sure, just take a jetpack
But
and
if you have
do
a
a
class,
class to somebody.
we're gonna look at it the same way we would if they were in a classroom. If there's a class of 25 and there's 3 or 4 that aren't understanding it or able to process it a certain way, then we find another way. So if there are students that are having issue with hotspots and data and things like that, then teachers will work with those students to find different ways to get that material to them and give them different avenues to be able to, you know, stay on the same path as everybody else.
And my only point to that, Bruce, is we don't have a way to track what someone's using in their house. Because for instance, if I get a video that's a 10-minute clip of a teacher explaining something, and I watch it one time, that's X amount of data that I use. If I go back and record it and watch it 7 different times, that keeps consuming data. So it's all dependent upon the end user, the person consuming that product. If you watch it once versus watching it 10 times, the person who watched it once just used 10% of the data that the person who watched it 10 times. That's what I'm saying is we won't have that capability. Now, what we do have though, we are gonna have some district issued hotspots. Those, we will be able to track absolutely what type of data is being used on them, on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. But that will just be limited to the district-owned hotspots that we are planning on to, give out to families that don't have internet at home. The other piece that's out there, and I'm sure some of you have noticed the advertisements by internet companies, almost all of them now are doing some form of a 60-month or 60-day free internet service if you have school-age children. Those programs, we will also be pushing out to all of our families as well.
So we will get them those programs.
Yes,
So they can get in.
yes.
I'm just kind of concerned that, they hit the end of their data usage, and now all of a sudden, there we are just scrambling, and I just want to be really careful here, because I see it with our company, that they're doing this stuff all the time, and sometimes I can't do it on regular internet, because I don't pay any attention then.
Sure.
But then when I take the jetpack, and I'm watching some of this stuff, and I'm looking at like, holy moly, it just killed everything there. Well, if in our school days, that these people are filling up in a week's time, my only thought was if we can have a sample, if somebody's doing a sample school day, which I'm sure you're gonna do, maybe they present it to somebody that's got one of the jetpacks we have, just see what it uses.
Yeah, well, we will have full data on the 40 devices that we plan to deploy to families that don't have
Okay.
internet. So we will have that data. Again, that data is only as good as what happens on the consumption side of that data. If you have a
But in all
student,
forecasting, you would take kind of an average. If you thought the students were gonna look at it once or twice, if somebody uses it excessively, that could be something else. But just on average, to make sure,
we will have a snapshot. But are there gonna be outliers on our snapshot?
yeah,
Absolutely. And at the end of the day, the only person that ultimately knows, I mean, we will have a list of every place that the kids went to. So if they're continually watching Netflix or YouTube videos, we will know that. But again, I mean, I'm not going to be in the home saying, you can't watch Netflix, or
yeah,
you
I
can't watch.
understand it. I just wanna make sure it's pretty well set up on average for people. Because so often, we are sitting in a rural area with people stretching out many miles, different directions. There's people that I call around that don't even have a good cell phone, let alone anything else. And then all of a sudden, we're getting into this. It's not like we're in Roseville or something where their access is unlimited and their choices are unlimited.
And we do have a pretty good survey data. The last time I checked, there were over 400 families that responded to the survey, as far as who needs an internet hotspot. And now the next step is to contact those families that haven't responded to the survey to finalize how many we need and everything. So.
But if we get them out, because anybody that's, we have MediaCom locally, I think whatever Windstream is, it's another name right
Yeah,
now.
there's about
That
5
should be
providers
local.
that you can choose from. Yeah, depending on your address is gonna depend on how many providers you have access to. So
Well, if we have
some
those,
have
we can
up to
maybe alleviate some of that.
Sure.
Too.
What's your own choice?
Yeah, our area only has one choice.
We just got
That's
an
it.
acre cooperative internet, I'm having that put in tomorrow.
That's supposed to be really powerful.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, now, just kind of fascinated by this whole thing. It's uncharted territory. You've got classes where this is gonna fit in very well. I say, what do you do with the large classrooms that need a group like band, choir, phi ed, even some art classes? I suppose the teachers have got to come up with something.
I think the FIAD classes, those are maybe easier
Yeah,
than some
They
others.
can go out and run every day.
Phi-Ed Band and Choir have a pretty sound idea on what they're gonna do. Okay, they're gonna be doing some virtual lessons and just some different things. I have been just really impressed with all the different departments that are preparing their distance learning plan. We are looking at how we do some of our middle school classes. This happens right at the end of a quarter, and then a new quarter is starting, and how we do, a middle school welding class. So that will all come out in the plan, and we have kind of a system on how we're gonna do some things with the
quite a challenge.
One thing that would be, as it rolls out, I like it starting out simple, I think that's important. But, like we've talked sometimes about like a mentor program, so how could we have some older kids versus like, if there is a class and, students learn different ways, that teacher can't be one-on-one with everyone in video chat, but utilizing some of the older students or kids in the class to have the opportunity to step up and do some training and teaching themselves. I think those are some cool things that we haven't really been able to do, where now we could have high schoolers be available, like hours available to mentor in math. I mean, I just think there's lots of possibilities where we could just do things differently. And we've talked about wanting to do more of that. Well, I think there's some golden opportunities here.
Yeah, I mean, my personal opinion only, and it may be a minority opinion, but I think there are a lot of silver linings for schools and reimaging schools and what we should be focused on and how we should be focused and what learning should look like. I think there are loads of silver linings in what we're trying to do. And that does in no way diminishes face-to-face communication, because that is incredibly important. And that is a huge shortcoming of distance learning. But I think being thrust into this distance learning model, when the dust settles and we go back, I think the real key is how our system's gonna take the best of what we were doing and combine it with the best of what we had to do to come up with, this is the new mode of operation. That, to me, is really gonna be the next big challenge.
And I think students are probably going to be more easily adaptable to this whole change. I think parents are the ones that are potentially the most anxiety ridden. I've heard a lot of parents say, well, I don't want to have to teach my kids. I don't enjoy doing that, or I can't. Whereas I think the students, they're going to be fine and pick up pretty quickly. It might be the students are helping teach and prep, whoever their parents or family are. The one thing about the bus situation and food, I would just have a question, is that opportunity going to be constantly available in front of parents, as they might have initially said, no, don't need it, but maybe 3 weeks down the road, their kids are home alone, they're not eating properly, how will that be an easily opt-in?
There's no registration for it. I continue to get emails, even I got one today, and the person who emailed me was very apologetic. I apologize, but I was one who didn't turn my survey in. I would really like to be able to participate in the meal program. Is it too late? What do I need to do? So yeah, there is no registration.
Okay.
It is simply, come show up at any of these locations between the hours of 7:30 to 8:15, and we will get you however many meals you need. We have talked as an administrative team, if we run out of food, whoever's there to tell them we ran out of food will take their name, address, and phone number, and we will drive meals to them as soon as we can get them made. So yes, we have no interest in making this or putting any restrictions to it to make it hard to access.
Or that people know what's available, like they didn't miss their opportunity from that survey.
We'll
And if
we'll keep pushing it out.
Okay,
But what Katie and Amy did the last couple of days, we have a list of all the families that did not respond to the survey. And so we will start calling those families
okay.
and asking some of the questions that were on the survey. And so if they forgot or they, just didn't do it, we'll have that opportunity, which will be really, really helpful in
So I
getting
think
some of that data.
Parents will probably change their mind as this
Yeah.
goes on, and
Yeah.
they're like, my kids are eating cereal every day for lunch,
Yeah.
and they're still working.
And we'll keep pushing it out in newsletters and things
Okay.
like that.
The
Today's-
best advertisement is word of mouth.
Yeah,
To give you an idea, I think our first day that we did this, I think we served about 150 meals. This being our third day, we're over 400 meals. And in my opinion, it's only gonna grow, and we have capacity, so.
and if we're gonna be handing out physical resources too, and might have more parents, maybe like if kids can pick up books or something physical, I just think more and more parents are gonna opt in. But
It's been really,
That's awesome.
it's been great.
So one more thing.
Yeah,
I don't mean to keep sticking on this thing, but does anybody have a map of our district of what resources they have to get free internet? So we got people up north of Lake Henry, we've got people south, so they're 276, that's out of Meeker County. We got, I think the people over by, in Valley on a different exchange. Do we have something that says, oh, perfect?
Yep, it'll all go out in the distance learning plan. There will be, so for instance, we are building an account. Our tech support is gonna be known as Connected ISD 741. The tech email, if you have tech issues, is gonna be connectedisd741.org. The phone number is going to be something along with Connect ISD 741 and help. So everything is running, people are gonna get to know Connect at ISD 741. That Connect is going to have a component right in this distance learning plan that has vibrant internet, Windstream, Mediacom, Arvig. There's 6 providers that hit some component of Paynesville area schools, and all of those will be going out with a little descriptor as best we can to try to describe their service area. But what people really need to do, they just need to take those service providers and pick up the phone and call their 1-800 number and give them their address, and they'll tell them if they can provide service or not. Almost all of them right now, at the minimum, they're running 60 days free basic internet for anyone who has a K-12 age child in the house. Or a lot of them are even doing a college student, with college students also doing distance learning or online learning. A lot of them are extending it if you have a college student that's living at home now because of a closure.
And you really do just need to pick up the phone and call them all, because almost all of them say they cover me and you,
Right,
and
they
I've
don't.
called all of them, and almost none of them, I think one that services,
Yep.
and that's the one I have, so.
That's exactly what I'm kind of concerned about.
Exactly, me
I don't want
too.
somebody to call 1 or 2 people up and then give up and think this is a hopeless event, and then we don't find out about it until some student has missed some of their learning.
I guess I find it, I mean, David and Mary know more than I on this, but I really think the conversations that we are having right now, it has always surrounded around this idea that if you don't have students participating, if you don't have students engaging in the work that you're asking them to engage in, let's not wait for something miraculously to happen a week from now. Let's pick up the phone and make a call.
Get on it right away.
Yes, so I really believe that message has been repeated over and over and over, and there will be structures in place as we move forward to be able to even make sure we're having conversations in-house during this time where we're going to do distance learning, so that we know if those students are in that situation.
And I think our district is at a nice, small enough size where it'll be harder to let students fall through the cracks.
Agreed, yep,
So,
agreed.
Yep. Okay. Any other comments on this topic?
I know things are so fluid right now, you're just trying to get into one day at a time for a week, but as an administrative team, and thinking contingency plans down the road, what if this happens or that happens? I mean, spring's a busy time, a lot going on. And it gets frustrating when we're, not knowing what tomorrow's gonna bring, and yet we're planning other events. And like last week, we had to cancel several events in the school. How far in advance do you start looking and saying, well, if by this time this doesn't happen, then this is gonna happen?
Well, I think the conversations we've been having have been May 15th to May 20th. That's kind of what we're gauging right now, is once you go down this road, I read an article several weeks ago that they talked about if you're gonna close schools, you better close them for anywhere from 8 to 20 weeks. To do it any less than that, it's not gonna accomplish anything. So, to me, the governor's, his hand's on the table with schools being closed right now. I think realistically, you take 8 weeks from March 18th, and that's gonna get us right around that May 15th date.
so we are planning on doing a graduation ceremony at some point.
Well, I think that's the ideal.
Right.
I'm not gonna commit to that today,
Right.
but I think that's the goal, that's the hope, that's what we would like to do, but I don't know that we can sit here
I mean, even
today.
if we had to,
We
It had to
will
be
put a lot of
later.
thought into creating the opportunities for our graduates that previous graduating classes have had.
Yeah.
It might be it might look way different, and it might be a little more compact, but we want to give those students the opportunity to be honored, and how we do that, we just don't know. And thinking about, you know, into May, we're thinking about it, we've had discussions about it today in my office, but we find that when we start looking that far ahead, then something else changes that we're dealing with immediately. So we're just kind of looking at that, and as we get settled into this, you know, what we're doing, then we will continue to look at that stuff. And we're mindful of how much time is needed to prep for certain events, and so we're working on that timeline also, but it really is just up in the air right now.
Well, and I think for me, I've pretty much heard from the general public that this is the end of the school year. So just to hear the hope that we could be back, that brings a little glimmer of hope, especially for the seniors, but for everybody.
Yeah.
That we could have some sense of normalcy, maybe, by the end of the school year. If not, but it's good to know that we haven't dismissed the idea completely.
No, we're holding out hope for everything.
I really appreciate the administration we've got. They've really looked at all the possibilities, and they're putting the what if and what fors all together just in case, so they've got kind of an idea set. And I think this talk here is letting the public know that you are on top of it. And I'm really appreciative that you're doing the work you are.
And it's fantastic, we have the one-to-one technology already in place.
Yes.
So much of
That was a
it.
boom.
And I think, you know, contingency means we're planning on graduation, but you're also thinking that.
I just get really nervous, and this is the one thing that I told all of our employees. We need to be really careful about not making promises that we can't fulfill.
No, yeah.
And it's okay for teenagers to be mad and upset, and they can vent, and they can be in all those places, and those are all justifiable. But as adults, we just need to be very careful that we don't promise something we can't deliver. And that's why I get nervous when somebody's asking me, are we going to have prom, or are we going to have commencement? I hope, I want to. I think even if we could get back on May 15th, I think there's things that the high school would have lots of leeway to be able to do things different but yet similar, and come up with creative ways to do a lot of these things. But it just is something that, like David said, you try to communicate with people, and 2 hours after you communicate with them, the rules are changing, and that makes it very hard to put any guarantee on
You
it.
can't promise anything.
Right.
Well, we're not alone. There is nothing that I have heard that is anything but hopeful. I haven't heard a date of anything from anybody on this whole thing, so like you said, Matt, we just gotta do the best we can, and Rick is just wanting us to look forward, what if?
Yep.
Isn't that what you're talking about? Just so we have an idea, not a specific plan, but looking forward, so I think we're good there. Any other comments? Then let's go to review upcoming meetings. Looks like we got a couple of board meetings, that's all that's here.
So policy committee I had to cancel. I guess I'm wondering, the question for the policy committee, and that's Thomas, Maggie, and Rick. Would you guys want to be the first remote meeting guinea pigs?
Sure.
Okay. I want to check the rules on a committee meeting.
Okay.
If I need to have a board member in my office with me, or if you guys can all be remotely, I'm not sure what those rules are, so I want to check that. But that being said, I'm wondering what Tuesday, April 7th would look like on people's calendar.
Everything's canceled tonight, so I'm free every night.
And I would have been just coming back from Mexico, but I'm here now, so.
Rick, are you thinking that would be okay for you?
I'm here today.
Okay, so we're gonna call that Tuesday, April 7th.
And you'll send out
Yeah, and we're gonna double check with MSBA and stuff of how we have to do that for a remote committee meeting. My gut tells me it'll be the same, but I just wanna make sure. And we'll do 6:00 PM. And potentially I'll need one of you to join me at the meeting location, the other two could be remote. But if we could do that as the first run, that would make me feel more comfortable in doing a full board meeting that way as well. So I would appreciate your willingness to give it a try.
Okay. Then, Jake, you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, I do. I move that the board be now adjourned.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second by Cheryl. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say no, carried.